Welcome to this week's edition of Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned. You know, there are people that you meet who don't just walk into the room, they shift the entire frequency of it. Marsha Vanwynsberghe is one of those people. She's a powerhouse NLP trainer, mentor, best-selling author, speaker, and the creator of Outspoken, the work she leads to help people rewrite the stories running their lives and businesses. But what makes Marsha magnetic isn't just her credentials, it's her energy. It's how deeply she embodies the message she teaches. It's how unapologetically she stands in her truth. In this episode, we're going there, the place beyond hustle, beyond ambition, beyond proving, into the real work, the subconscious recalibration that unlocks everything. Because the success you're chasing, it won't feel like yours until your energy is on board. Get ready. This is a permission slip to burn down what's not true and build what is. Welcome, Marsha. So thrilled to welcome you to Ambitious, Awakened, and Aligned, Marsha. Thank you for investing your time and energy with us.
Thank you, Lori, for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, so we're going to dive right in. You talk about ambition getting you far, but not all the way.
Mhm.
So I'm curious if you can walk us through a moment when you realized your subconscious mind wasn't on board, and how did that awakening shift really everything for you?
Ooh, okay. That's a great question. I have very much prided myself in being ambitious and driven and, focus forward, right? Like it was a badge. It wasn't just that I did it. It was a badge of honor. And I'm not actually upset with that. I'm proud of that because I think that those are skills and those are pieces of resiliency that we all have to build. And so
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with that. But there does always come a point where I believe like that was my strength. And I think there comes a point for all of us where our strengths become our weakness
Mm.
because it's the only thing we rely on. And I was really in that space of pushing, pushing, pushing. And I've done that for a number of years and a number of decades. Who am I kidding? And I remember being actually in the hospital in 2020. I was having back surgery and I've had a long history of endometriosis. I have a lot that's another whole podcast. I have a long history of, multiple surgeries and things that I've had to go through health-wise and also story-wise. As a parent who dealt with teen substance abuse, so I started to openly share my story publicly. And I thought if you just put your head down, push, do the work, that you change the story. And I did. Actually, I did for a long time. But what I didn't understand is that our subconscious mind is always the one that's running the show. It's 95% of who we are. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our decisions. And so you can muscle it, but you're really only muscling it with 5% of what you're capable of.
Mm.
When you bring the subconscious mind on board, that's where I was realizing there was a disconnect. So here I was in the hospital, 50 years old, pandemic happened, learning literally how to walk again, and in a space of job gone, trying to figure out what I'm going to do, how I'm going to make this work. And there is no more boats, right? They talk about burning the boats, they like imploded. There was nothing left to go back to. I couldn't go back to my job then. And I remember reading about NLP and subconscious mind, and it sparked something in me that I was like, oh, this is interesting. I just want to read it. I have nothing else to do in the hospital because I'm literally in there. And I'm reading this, and it was a moment of, wow, okay, so subconscious mind, you hold on to old stories. What if there are old stories that are there on repeat
Mm.
that I'm not even aware of? And so I had this kind of almost this cracked open moment where it's like, maybe there's something more to this. And I got curious. Now, as I really started to understand, NLP was something I'd been doing for 10 years. I just didn't know it.
Mm.
And that's really what helped me to create change from my languaging to, my state to identity work to all those pieces. But it was in that hospital that I went, the disconnect is that I don't have a problem with working hard. That's like, I think I've proven that 10 times over. There must be a different disconnect that I can't see.
Mhm.
because I know lots of people are having success, again, whatever success is to you. They're creating it, and it's not happening for me in the way that I want without costing me everything.
Mhm.
There must be a different way, and that's where I started to open up and go, "I think I'm meant to learn this." So when I took my NLP practitioners, I had no intention of doing the work that I do now. I took it for me. It was one of the first things I took just for me to learn a little bit more about where is that disconnect and how can I actually, to put it into your words, how can I get my ambition to work for me instead of
Mhm.
against me? 'Cause I actually think at that point, my ambition was working against me. I think it was actually burying me.
Mhm.
And I was coming from the lens and the energy of trying to prove my worth, which is never going to work, just in case anybody ever wants to know. And so that's really, I think, where the turning point was in a hospital bed in 2020.
Wow, it's interesting how we almost have to have those sort of come to our knees moments,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like, that allows you to pause, forces you, not even allows, forces the pause that has you go inward to find the answers. So it's, I think story after story is I know my moment, it was on my knees as well, and I think we share a similar story of that. The hard work wasn't the problem, the ambition was there, the drive was there. What do you think is the piece that is that, because I also believe we both think that's really important, actually. There's seasons of, being really ambitious, and ambition, it's the coexisting I've found, like ambition and alignment and all of those things can come in to coexist and be really beautiful when we're coming at them from a different lens. So, what was that subtle shift in the lens, even that had you look at it differently and therefore experience it differently?
Well, again, I think that's a really good question. For me, I think I've always been in a proving energy, like trying to
Yeah,
prove that I could do it. Right.
right,
And I've had a lot of major challenges in my life. And so it's kind of always been the knock me down, back I get up again, knock me
right.
down, back I get up again. Almost to a point that it's like, okay, well, knock down, whatever, I'm going to come back up again. And that's just what I do. And it almost became a point of just accepting that it's being knocked down over and over is part of the process. But in that, I could hear myself and feeling almost this proving energy. And I heard this quote a number of years ago. I cannot remember who said it, but it said, if you are trying to prove your worth, you don't approve of yourself. And that one hit me really hard because I went, who am I trying to prove myself to? If you are trying to prove yourself, I promise you, it is not to yourself. It's actually for someone else.
Mm,
And if you're trying to prove yourself and your worth to somebody else, the other question that comes in, and this is just another little bit of a spiral, is that if your values are different than the person that you're trying to prove yourself to, you're never going to match. It's never going to happen. And so for me, I caught myself recognizing that I was trying to prove nonstop that yes, I can come back. Yes, I can be stronger. Yes, I can be successful. But it's like, to who though? Like,
mm,
to who am I doing this to? And that's when I started to recognize that, okay, wow, I'm putting all of that external. So that's one of the questions I would ask. And for any of your listeners is, if you're trying to prove yourself outside, like to something else, and especially if it is somebody that your values are not actually aligned, then you're going to be chasing that for the rest of your life and you will never, ever reach it.
mm,
And that is freaking exhausting. It's
it's
exhausting. You're
exhausting.
never gonna reach it, and so then all of the reasons why we do it, right? The fulfillment, the, legacy, paying it forward, doing the things to help others, and none of that's gonna be enough because proving is actually driving the wheel. You've gotta shift that story, release that, like, those stuck emotions, and lead from a different lens.
Mm, that's so powerful because also in the proving is this energy of you don't see your worth. You're never
100%.
seeing your worth, and yet we were born worthy, we were born whole, and if we could just sit in that place, right? So being able to get into alignment with that is so powerful. One of the things that caught me when I first met you, And I just love the vibration of women standing in their truth. And I knew the moment we happened to meet in a bathroom the first time.
Oh, we did
I
too. I forgot
we
about
did.
that. Yes.
At a beautiful women's event, and there was such powerful energy in the room, but the second we walked past each other, it's that palpable, "I feel you. I feel your frequency." When I see you on social media, when I see you at other events, I feel your frequency. It's an energetic knowing that you are standing in your wholeness, and it's so magical to experience. So, I think it's that, describe to me who Marsha is. It's that feeling of the frequency that you're vibrating at. So what did you even notice in the shift of going from the proving to the being and that, expansion, evolution of you becoming that next version of yourself or really coming home to yourself? What contributed to that, like that magnetism? What's brought that forward?
Mm. There's something about this question that is hitting home. I cannot wait to re-listen to this because
Mhm.
it's a beautiful thing. I think that once you release trying to prove yourself, once you really get into understanding what those blocks and the beliefs and barriers that you have, because we all have them, every single one of us, I don't care who you are, we all have them. They are limiting beliefs that are sitting in our subconscious mind that have been running the show, right? They've been running the show our whole lives. And I think once we can address those beliefs, see them, like rewire them, and get our subconscious mind on board with the direction that we're moving in. Okay. So we can't outwork something we don't believe is possible. So I'm over here going six-figure business, six-figure business. This is what I want to do. Like so driven that it's like almost the number is all that mattered. And that's not who I am. Just so that's actually not who I am, but that's who I was becoming.
Mhm.
And I'm in that space. I hit it in 2022 for the first time ever,
Mhm.
and I completely lost it all the next year. And I think I needed to do that because I had built a business that wasn't even mine. I didn't love
Mhm.
it. Um, it's not who I was.
Mhm.
And everything was, again, that proving energy is all external. Okay. So you're all in that space. And in 2022, I went through an NLP and master practitioner. We learned how to facilitate and we receive a breakthrough day. And a breakthrough day is like an 8 hour, it's pretty intensive. It's like condensing 6 months of coaching in one day. And then the integration of that happens afterwards. So the reason I'm tying this in is because in that day, you're able to get to what the actual blocks are
Mm.
subconsciously that you have. And for me, it was comparison. And I thought it was comparison of, someone's doing better than me on social media. Somebody's building a better business. Somebody is like, it's really easy to be blindsided and swayed by how you think they're doing. Right. And we don't know how anyone's doing. We actually really don't. And if you're not sure on that, ask yourself, how much does everyone else know about your own life? Because they don't, right? They know snippets. And so I really got to the root of that with comparison. And then what happened was I released that block. And once I released that block, I started to recognize that I'm not here to build it like anyone else.
Mm.
I'm actually not here to so if I'm trying to sound like everyone else, I'm not being myself. It's just that simple. And I know I can already hear the first thing people say is like, but what is everybody going to say? Well, also, when you understand subconscious mind and how it works, the only reason you are offended by what someone else is saying about you is because it reflects something in you that you actually believe is true.
Mhm.
I know that hurts. I know that hurts and it stings, but it's also freeing because I often say if I recognize that I'm the problem, I'm also the solution. That's a beautiful thing. And so I sit here and it's like when I recognize that the comparison that was happening, the judgment, all of those pieces, the only reason it was affecting me was because a part of me believed that to be true.
Mhm.
A part of me believed that I couldn't do it my own way. And so through the process, through my podcast, through speaking, I've really had time. It takes time to learn your own voice, to like really anchor in on it. And it just so happens the event that you're referring to, I think this is important because I was being asked to speak on a wealth panel. And if you know my story, it's like there was even a part of me in the morning where I woke up and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, how am I speaking on a wealth panel? It felt it didn't feel authentic yet. And so I went for a long walk in the morning and I went, okay, but you're not supposed to do it like anyone else does it. Remember? Like remember, that's the arrangement is like you do it your own way. And it's so interesting because I remember I went to the host and I said, "Is it okay if I like lean into this?" And they're like, "Yes, we didn't want you to do it any other way. We wanted you to do it your way." So as I sat there and listened to the beautiful explanations about wealth and the ways that everybody was explaining, nobody's wrong, nobody's right. It's just beautiful ways and different interpretation. My question was, can you feel wealth and abundance when you actually don't have it by standards?
Mhm.
And can you do that? Can you look in your bank account and it has $100 and go like, but look at what I have in my life. Look at what I've done. And that is a frequency of abundance, in my opinion. It's not based on do you want more than that? Of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But can you feel wealth in your body, feel safe for having it? If you don't have it. Well, that's the same with being authentic, in my opinion. Can you really anchor in on being authentic if you don't sound like anyone else who's out there because you're not supposed to? And that's kind of the permission slip that I've been giving myself. And because I've done this a number of times, I only say this, I take a moment and I stack it as a win. Marsha, you showed up as yourself. Good for you. You didn't have to do it the same way that anyone else did it. And I can't tell you how many times that has turned into a client connecting and saying, I don't know what it is, but
Mhm.
can I work with you in some way, shape, or form? Because I'm not doing that in my life. And I know I want to, but I don't know what that looks like. And it's scary.
Mhm.
To me, that's giving others permission to be themselves, to get to know who they are, to be able to show up and share. Because I will attract my clients that I am meant to work with because they will get to see me and hear me. If I try and sound like everyone else, then they don't know who I am and they don't know how I can help them. And it's meant to be like we get to be who we are at the core. So that's what it means to me. Now, quick caveat, that also means I'm always checking in on that. Like, even that morning of the event, I was having doubts of like, I feel almost like an imposter because I feel like I'm not going to do it the way everyone else does it. And there's nothing wrong with being an imposter. Nothing wrong. I think we're invested and we care and we want to do a good job. There's nothing wrong with that. But even then, I had to sit myself down and go, but you're not supposed to do it like everyone else.
Mhm.
Right. Authenticity. That's what it is.
Mhm.
So I think that it's not a one and done. I think you're always doing. I think you're
Mhm.
always like recalibrating and, what's my message? What am I here to do? And how do I show up and share?
Well, I think that recap thank you. What a beautiful explanation of that experience. And I love so much when we just peel back the curtain
Thank
as women who have, gone through that evolution piece
you.
and are working towards the coming home to self. Because we've spent decades in a programming that we created from the stories, the limiting beliefs, all of those things, and so it's the coming home to self is also getting to know that voice,
Mhm.
and you have to have the pause to sit down and say, "Wait a second, where's my authentic me in this right now?" Okay. I've gotta check in with that because we were programmed for so long, right? Like, I often I think when I hit 50, it's like, "Who are you now?" Well, I don't know. I don't know even I've just created this version of me that fit everywhere I was in the hustle and grind of everything, and so now sometimes I think it's even funny to sit down and say, "Well, wait a second. How would you, Lori, like you, real you, go deep in your soul what does that look like?" And it's weird and wonderful and scary and perfect and messy and all of it, right? It's
All of
it's
it.
wild. That's what it
All of
is. It's a
it. I
wild ride.
I love how you shared that. That's exactly it. You're always coming back and always coming back. The more freedom you give yourself and allowing yourself to be yourself, the easier it will get. Like you just have to
Mhm,
keep leaning into it. And I often come back to that, the people that are in my life today, my entire inner circle has been completely like it's completely brand new over the last 5, 10 years. And then I just look at it and go, like, if I didn't, I know vulnerability can be scary, but I stop and I'm such an evidence person
Mhm.
I look at it like, who is in my life today because of vulnerability? I'm like, literally everyone, like
Mm,
everyone. I wouldn't know them. I wouldn't have connections. I wouldn't be.
mhm.
So I know it feels scary, but I'll tell you, it's a lot scarier to be isolated, pretending to be something that you're not, in my opinion.
It is a lot scarier.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's taking that first step towards. Whew. So what is and I feel like you're okay to go there. What is, a story just to help our listeners because I think sometimes people can be listening and they say, I get it. I hear what Marsha's saying. I want to walk that journey. But then they don't even understand the stories running them. We don't always see the stories running us. So, what is one sort of burn to the ground story as an example that you had to walk through to step towards becoming the version of you that you are today?
Yeah. This is, I know exactly where I want to go with this. And I'm just going to be, again, brutally honest and real. So I was a parent who dealt with teen substance abuse. It came out of left field. I had no there was no agenda, there was no plan, there's no
Mm,
parenting goal, there's no nothing. And we were the subject of tremendous criticism, judgment, opinions. Like people are worried about being yelled at online. I was yelled at in the grocery store. I was yelled at
mm,
on my front step. People coming to my door saying, "Do something with your kids." Like it was wild. It was wild. And I feel like that criticism was when I really put the armor up and I became this like pusher to share the story. Like I just had to fight through.
mm,
And that's how I did it for a really long time. But at the root of that, at the root of that story, in full transparency, was that I was a mom who failed.
mhm,
That was and so why do you think I fought so hard? Because God forbid, I didn't want anyone to know that story.
mm,
I didn't want them to. I wanted them to see this strong, like, person who was out there sharing and trying to make a difference and do something good. It wasn't an ego thing. I really did wanna do something good with it, but I didn't want people to know that at the root of that was this perfectionist who felt like she failed
mhm,
because I it's human nature is interesting.
mm,
How we make sense of things, the very first thing that we do when we try to make sense of something is somebody must be at fault. Like
mm,
there must be someone at fault. There must be someone to blame. Like something went wrong. I have people say all the time, like, what's the one thing you did wrong? What's the one thing you wish you could do differently? So you can even hear subconsciously, plus the words I was saying to myself, because I mean, people would criticize me, but trust me, I had done all of it to myself too. At the root of all that was that I had failed. And so that was the story I had to start to rewrite because no matter what, our kids, we don't share a brain with them, right? We don't. They actually are going to go do their thing. They're going to, regardless of what you say or do, you can set good examples and all these things, but they're going to make decisions. They're going to make mistakes. And I hope that they do make mistakes because that's how they learn, but they're going to do things so that they will then learn in the process. And I had to be almost so methodical to sit down and, write the list of all the things that I did do and what did I try and do and what did I try and fix. And I did a lot of counseling and therapy during those years because it was a really messy time. And in doing so, I remember hearing, you did everything. And I'm like, but okay, so I've checked the boxes that you want me to check, right? Type A. So why do I still have a problem? Because you told me to do this and I did it. So why are we still here? And
mm,
they're like, because it's not your problem to solve. Well, there's no parent that wants to hear that, right? But that was the message. It's not your problem to solve. So the reason I share this is I had to change the story that I had failed as a mom. Do I think I could have done some things differently? 100% I do. And I also got to the point of recognizing that I could go back and change every single thing that happened and I could still be in the exact same spot because there was more than just myself in the equation. And so that's when I really started to recognize it. So in order to change that story, I had to forgive myself.
mhm,
And that process of forgiveness with myself was one of the hardest things that I have ever had to go through
mm,
and one of the most powerful because at the end of changing that story is where I found self-compassion and grace and like loving myself on a different level,
mhm,
which also allowed me to forgive others, right? if you want to anything you want outside of you, you have to give it to yourself first.
Mhm.
So I wanted to forgive my kids. I wanted to forgive other people for their criticism and judgment. It
Mhm.
started with me forgiving myself first because I lived in the chaos and I didn't know what the hell to do. So how can I expect like Joe on the street to know what to do because he wasn't even living in it? And so I had to forgive myself first,
Mm.
write that story because now my story is, do I think that there are things I could have done differently? Yes. At the end of the day, did I do everything within my power? Did I turn over every single rock that I could do? And you bet your ass I did.
Mhm.
Everywhere I did. And
Mhm.
so that's where I started to recognize that that was the story that had to change.
Mm.
And sometimes the story that we have to release and we have to change, you don't know what that is, but you're going to have to start asking yourself some different questions. Right? Asking yourself some different questions as to, I want to do this. Maybe you have a goal up here and asking yourself, do you believe that you are capable of doing that? And if the answer is like, I don't know, maybe not why, ask yourself why. Like, why do you think so? What and I think we're about 7 layers deep in questions to get to the root of it.
Mhm.
That story was, it changed my life and honestly allowed me to release so much shame and so much guilt that I think that's also allowed me to have even better relationships with people now because
Mhm.
I'm not here to change people. I'm here to like be myself authentically. And I know that everyone is on their own journey.
Mhm.
Everyone, I'm on my own journey. So why would my kids not be on their own journey too?
Mhm. Before we dive back in, I want to take a moment to share something close to my heart. Because if you're listening to this, I have a feeling you might be ready too. What if the version of you that got you here isn't the one who's meant to take you there? You've done the things. You've built the business, you've worn the smile, you've played the part. But inside, you're craving something deeper. Not just success, but alignment, aliveness, expansion. I created Ready for More for the woman who knows she's built a good business, but is no longer willing to settle for almost. This is a 90-day transformational experience that weaves together soul and strategy, from powerful neuro tools to rewiring your identity to somatic practices that anchor you into your truth. This is your space to rise, not by doing more, but by becoming more of who you really are. So if you've been whispering to yourself, there's got to be another way, this is your invitation. You were always ready. You just needed the room to become her. Join us in that room. You can find us at hawkinspired.com/ready for more. Or we'll put the link in the show notes for you. All right, let's get back into the conversation, but maybe now with a new question in your heart. What if you really are ready for more? Yeah, it's so interesting as a mom because we wrap ourselves up so deeply in the identity of who our children are, what choices they make, and yet they are here on a path. And in so many ways, we actually try to block that, from them feeling pain or them experiencing something that they are meant to, just like we did along the way. And so I really thank you for sharing that deep. I had tears in my eyes as you were sharing it because one of the things I've really worked on in the last few years is that separation of identity from my children, that I am not them and I am not their choices. And yet, who am I if I don't wrap myself up in that? Oh, well, then we can start to actually figure out who we are. And when we were I shared with you, we were just back from, 2 weeks at a retreat in Bali, and, we had a beautiful doctor there that owned the one resort that we were at, and his words will stick with me for life. It takes 5 days of calm, pause, separation from our normal lives to fall in love with the most important person in your life, and that's you.
Oh, that is beautiful. That's
And as
beautiful.
women, like that, if we can encourage together anything as women, we've got to fall in love with us.
That is absolutely beautiful, and I'm sure there are so many women who went 5 days. How do I get 5 days to do that? But
Yes.
it's such a great message.
Mhm,
And, as much as there are probably a lot of us who wish our kids could see that we are actual people, not just moms, right?
mm,
Like, we're actually people.
mhm,
And but then do we treat ourselves that way? Do
mm,
we actually like allow ourselves to have a separate identity from our kids? Do we allow ourselves that? Because if we don't, again, we can't expect somebody else to treat us differently if we're not doing that to ourselves.
mhm.
That is such a and so every time I feel myself like I wish they would understand or I wish they would be more kind and compassionate and it's like a ding 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 for me.
Mm,
I'm like, "Oh, where do I need to do more of that for myself?"
yes,
Where do I need like, that's the permission piece. So that is a coming home that happens every single time I feel myself wanting something else
yes.
outside. It's like, where can I give that back to myself?
Mm, so important, and especially coming off of, holiday weekends where typically the moms are running around kind of being the doers. You catch yourself in those moments. I catch myself in those moments of, I'm busy and everyone else is having a great time. What happens if I ask for what I need?
Mhm.
It comes. It actually comes. And so sitting there in those moments, recognize what your needs are and be an allowance of the people around you that actually love you. Just if you would just ask, typically, it's because we have created this pattern of taking over, doing it all, stepping in, being driven, and not actually asking for our own needs. And that's not selfish. That's actually it's a vital life force and it creates the opportunity for other people to be them as well. It's this beautiful allowance and alignment that can just be born from all of the releasing of those perspectives we put on ourselves. So thank you for sharing that. I think all of us can take something away from that that we can sort of hold our mirror up and sit with it for.
Absolutely. I'm happy I did, and it was a great question. And I do want to say that regardless of whether I had gone through what we did with our kids, I believe full-heartedly that those are lessons I was going to have to learn anyways.
Yeah,
There
they
comes a
were.
point you like, because they're eventually gonna be adults and go do their thing, and you want them to be able to think on themselves and think on their own, so I actually don't think that I think the lessons that I had was forced to learn early were lessons that I would have had to learn at one point in time.
Somehow.
Because yeah, because if your identity is wrapped up in how successful my kids are based on my own lens or your own lens, then that's an important piece to really start to uncover because they are gonna do their own thing. I mean, I often said, even before we started to have a lot of challenges, that if you said, "I love flipping burgers and I love doing," I'd be like, "Great, like, I could be the best burger flipper you can be." Like, let them do what
Yes.
they want. I know we look at it and go, "But there's no money in that. You can't do that. There's no security." I mean, times are changing really rampant, and I'll tell you, the best thing our kids can do now, I believe, is learn how to be flexible because it's changing so fast anyway. So their identity is gonna change 100 times over, honestly, if way more than ours ever did.
Oh,
So, let
yeah,
do that.
it's moving so fast, and, I think too, even in just saying the burger flipping situation, it's so funny because we always said that when they were kids too. Exactly that, the burger flipping. It's like as long
Sweater. I've always said it.
That's so funny. Um, but it's also the identity wrapped in your business because for me, like when COVID hit, my business changed overnight.
Okay.
And I had that successful six-figure business, and I didn't actually recognize how much my identity was wrapped in the success of the business.
Mhm.
And when it changed overnight, that was a big sort of, fall to the knees moment of unraveling the connection even of how much I was wrapped up in that as my identity. And so that's a beautiful awareness piece too. The kids, the business, the success. Like really it's about that whole self again and loving you as you are, as you the energy of who you are versus all these, outside external forces that we've attached to it. I do want to get to NLP. So, um, everyone's talking about NLP, and I'm not sure that everyone exactly knows what it is, how they can, create it as a practice in their life. So, can you go NLP on us?
I can go NLP. I
Yay.
love it's so funny because it's just yeah, anyways, I love it. So neuro linguistic programming, okay? Neuro is how we bring in the information through our senses and the language that we use, the language and the patterning, and then the programming and the patterning. So we all have our own programs and patterns of how we process information. Some of us are auditory learners, some of us are visual, some of us are kinesthetic. How we take in that information and then how we use it. So basically, NLP is like how we use the language of our mind to create the world that we want.
Mm,
Okay. So, language of our mind to create the world that we want.
mhm,
And it is I was a little bit resistant because I think for the longest time I thought I understood it that, you just have to you shout your affirmations into a mirror and it's not it.
mhm.
Because again, our conscious mind is our 5%. We are taking in 2.3 million bytes of information every second. Okay. So when you talk about a 5-day detox, like a 5 days to be like, that's why it takes 5 days because we are so overstimulated. They say that we take in the amount of information in one day that someone 100 years ago never took in for their entire lifetime. We are
Oh,
bombarded on all of our senses. And that's so just and you can see how, right? Phones, like, notifications and news and like it's just everywhere, right?
mhm,
So this is the piece of it is that we're taking in 2.3 million bytes of information every second. Our conscious mind has got to filter that or it would explode. It possibly
mm,
can't take in that much information. So we delete, we distort, and we generalize. And those cups, I say picture them as little cups that are moving on the table. They're changing every single second of every day based on how well we've taken care of ourselves, our sleep, our
mhm,
rest, our boundaries. So there we are literally a game of cups moving on the table every single day. That's why some days you might feel that like, I don't know why that one upset me so much because it's the same thing they do every other day, but your cups are different. And so that's literally why. And so when you start to understand that, that's the conscious mind is then filtering it out. Our subconscious mind is where all of our programming sits. And so our programming is what we have up until about the age of 8, subconscious mind wise. And that is our decisions, our thoughts, our beliefs that we have. And yes, that can all change, but that's where it's like literally anchored because that's where it's built.
mm,
So we have to get to the root of something that happened where most people misinterpret this is they look at it and think, okay, but I didn't have any trauma. Like I must have
mhm,
had trauma for and like, no. It doesn't have to be trauma. It's your perception of something, right? So it's your perception of something that you might have heard somebody say that all of a sudden now that's a belief of yours. I could see the root of my comparison, the root of my ambition, the root of my proving. When I started to do this work, it's like, oh, now you get to, through NLP, we get to work with the subconscious mind to actually find the root of the story. Because as you asked me earlier, comparison was something I was very much stuck in. I thought it
mhm,
had only to do with social media because consciously
mhm,
I'm looking at it going, that's the problem. Social media, I'm putting boundaries up. Why is this so bothering me? Why is this so, because that's not the root of the problem, right? That's not the root of the problem. Just like shouting affirmations is great, but if 95% of you doesn't even agree with what you're saying, you can't out affirmation something that you don't believe is possible.
mhm,
And so that's the subconscious, getting to the root of it, getting to the root of the story, the root of the belief. What happens when you do that is you actually get to change the lessons, the experience. You get to see it differently with different, like a different lens.
mm.
And then you can actually apply the lessons and learning to everything all the way up until today. So our subconscious mind remembers everything. When we do this work, it sounds so wild. I was such a science geek. I never would have believed this, but our subconscious mind believes everything from like multiple generations and past lives all the way into the present time and future. So that's a little bit about how NLP works in the subconscious mind. The beautiful thing is that there's a lot of different pieces to it, but that we can direct our mind. I like to color our eyes like the movie camera.
Mhm.
Most of us are like watching a movie that we've already played 100 times over, and we know all the parts and we know exactly what happens next. And we always predict it. And it's like, this isn't going to work for me because of XYZ. And your subconscious mind's responding. It's like, oh, you want proof of that? Okay, let me get that for you. And it pulls it up. Now, all of a sudden, I have all the evidence in front of me of all the times I've tried it and it hasn't worked because that's the only movie I'm watching. How can we create a movie of where we're going and what
Mhm.
do we see, feel, and hear? So, if you're going to create like a vision board, for example, which most people do, for the love of God, please put yourself in your vision board. Stop putting like people that are like
Mhm.
from a magazine in your vision board because there's no connection to you there.
Mhm.
So put yourself in the vision board is one thing. But what do you see, feel, and hear? That is the conscious, like actually creating this is your conscious mind creates this vision board. Now, how do you feel if you call all of that in? What does that feel like in your body? Does it feel safe? Or is there a part of you that goes like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do
Mhm.
this? This I see from women all the time. I ask them and they're like, I'm like, oh my God, this is a great vision. I love this. Okay, it happens today. How do you feel? You can actually see them contract. Like, no, no, not yet, though. Not yet, though. I'm not ready yet.
Mm.
And I'm like, interesting. Let's dive into that. So here's a piece that ties it right to the very beginning of what we spoke about is the fact that I can work like crazy over here. But if myself or you, we have this belief that I can't have that level of success, or it's not safe for me to have that level of success because I actually really deep down believe women are more fearful of success and can I manage it all than they are of failure. I
I
100% believe
completely
that.
agree.
100%.
Mhm.
Like, they're can I actually hold it all?
Mhm.
So, subconsciously, we work on, like, where are those blocks and barriers? How can we support our nervous system so that we can feel this, like, knowing and this calm, grounded energy that, yes, I can support this. Of course I can. And then we use subconscious reprogramming tools hypnosis, EFT tapping, subliminals, timeline work to actually start to experience what will I see, feel, and hear when I have this thing. And what happens is all of the sudden we start to see it, feel it, like believe that it's there. Now we don't have to go through this contraction phase
Mhm.
because we're actually in this calm, grounded, neutral phase. Because your subconscious mind's number one job is to keep you safe.
Mhm.
And so how can we train it that I am safe to go after what I want? I can hold that
Mhm.
and support that. And
Mhm.
so as if that explanation makes sense, I also just want to share one quick thing that like when I had my little not little when I had my breakthrough day in 2022 and I realized comparison was like really the root of so much for me that when I did that I also recognized my belief was that if my business grows my health and my relationships would suffer.
Mhm.
Your limiting belief doesn't have to make sense to anyone else.
Mhm.
There's no one told me those words, but that was my belief.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden I went, well, no wonder I'm going to get close enough to success and I'm going to sabotage it somewhere because I don't want to lose my health or my relationships.
Mhm.
So let's go to the root of it, change the root of it. Then I started to subconscious reprogramming that that's my values. That's who I am. So I say yes that to opportunities that are in line with me. Can I honor my health and my relationships? If I can't, then it's a no right now. And that's okay because that's my values. And so
That
we are
was so huge for me when you said that, at the event we were at, that was the panel you were speaking on, and, that's been my limiting belief as well. It's like those, um they're almost like competing priorities, the
mm,
health, relationship, and wealth. That's
yeah,
how I had viewed them in the past.
yeah,
And so when you said that, it's like, "Ooh, that's the one I've been working on," that it's
very
interesting, and I wonder how many women that's true, that we believe if they can't all coexist together is a part of the story, and yet they beautifully can, and we see examples where they do. And so I love that that's true. But I'm curious, how do you get to that core root? Like when you finally realized
Mhm.
it was the comparison not of the current social media, but long seated. How
Mhm.
do how do we get to that root?
It takes time to get to the root, and it really does take please work with somebody who is trained because
Yes.
I'm it's yeah, this is it's disturbing to me some of the things I'm seeing right now in the
Mhm.
coaching industry, but it's work with somebody who is trained because it should not be unsafe for you to do this. And you do not have to relive any experience or trauma to be able to do this. But what happens with NLP is like we go through a series of questions and they're subconscious questions and we ask you quickly and it's helping you to speak more to the subconscious mind because you will never consciously understand where that root is. You can't do it. You can't do it.
Beautiful. And we don't need to, and I think that's so important for people to understand because that almost puts a block, right? But
Mhm.
the reality of we only change at the speed of safety is so important for
So
people to
that's
understand.
I love that you said that because safety, I didn't even really understand that word until probably 2 years ago. And understanding that, like, what does inner safety mean? Like, can you feel safe within your body without that contraction phase? Can you feel safe if it's all working out? Can you feel safe if it feels like nothing's working out because you've got you? And that has been the work is really anchoring in on that belief. And I mean, it took time. It took almost the whole breakthrough day to find it
Yeah.
and then to work on rewriting it. But that's it. You really want to and even if you're like if you don't work with somebody, start asking yourself more questions. Like because
Mhm.
questions, statements like put your blinders on and what happens is your conscious mind is like dictating where you're going. Questions open up your subconscious mind. And when you ask
Mhm.
questions, all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, what about this? What is this? What do I feel about this? And you start to open up possibilities. That's a great way to do it, is just asking yourself more questions.
Oh, I love that. Get into curiosity.
Mhm.
And you said earlier, and that's so vital, I think we start at, like, the one question, and so often go to the why. Don't do that. Don't do that as the curiosity piece, like, "Why am I broken?" Please don't do that.
No,
It's go 7 deep. That was a really good, if you can go 7 deep in your questioning internally and just find that space to pause, it's
and
so beautiful, and also reach out to Marsha because she has incredible programs to support the going through this process and watch if you are in Marsha's energy and even just from this conversation you'll see I think it's so important to work with people that not just have the conscious practices which you do and, have gone through the process of the training and the right process to walk through that. Also, the knowing of someone who's walked the journey and done the work themselves. And I think the age, I say often on this podcast, the age of the guru is gone. We're sitting in a place where someone has walked a journey that they can put their hand back and just say, come alongside me. I'm just a little bit further on this process. And that's what Marsha is. And we put our hands forward to get the support that we need as well. So okay, I feel like we could talk for hours, and there'll be a version 2 on this.
Mm.
But to end our time together today, Marcia, maybe what's one truth you haven't had a chance to share that you would like to support our listeners with?
One truth that I haven't had a chance to share. Um, I think that I'm gonna follow my gut here. One truth is like, can you allow yourself to dream as big as you can? Like, allow yourself to think bigger than where you are today, because your mind today is like a compilation of everything up until today. So if you
Mm.
want something more, can you think bigger? And if you can think bigger, it is for you. I promise you, it is for you. And that might be like, oh my gosh, how is that possible? I still have moments and meditations where it's like, "Oh, wow, like, that's big." but it's, like, exciting. I'd be in a space of that. So the truth, I think, is that just can you lean in and allow yourself to dream bigger, think bigger,
Mhm.
because we all have a purpose, we all have gifts, we all have a story that can be shared, every single one of us, and there is nothing if you could have told me that it would feel like this, I wish I would have started sooner. There is nothing that feels more incredible than really, again, reaching that hand back, helping somebody else because you recognize that you were there too. And that to me is what I think we can all do. And I'm just grateful to be here for that kind of movement.
Mm. Thank you so much for sharing your energy, your truths, your expertise, your stories. All of it has just, I know, had an impact on everyone listening. And we're so grateful for your time. Until next time, thanks, Marsha. What an incredible, vibrant conversation with Marsha. There's something that happens when we stop proving and start embodying, when we stop chasing and start owning. I can't thank Marsha enough for bringing her full fire, her truth, and her energy to this conversation. Her words are a recalibration, a remembering. To those who have been listening, the change you're looking for, it's not out there, it's already in you. Your next level is not something you hustle harder to achieve. It's who you become when you drop the story that says you have to be anyone other than your fully aligned, wildly powerful self. Thank you so much for tuning in to Ambitious Awakened and Aligned. And if this episode spoke to you, please share it with someone who you know it will support, who needs the reminder that they are not broken, they are becoming. And until next time, pop the cork, stay bold, and lead from the truth of who you are.